Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Mrs. Bray Reads a Story. I've had another special request today for more Winnie the Pooh stories. Today we're going to be reading from Winnie the Pooh's book, When We Were Very Young. And we're going to be doing two by special request, one called Buckingham Palace and the other about a trip to the zoo. So, the story called Buckingham Palace. They're changing the guard at Buckingham Palace. Christopher Robin went down with Alice. Alice is marrying one of the guard. The soldier's life is terribly hard, says Alice. They're changing the guard at Buckingham Palace. Christopher Robin went down with Alice. We saw a guard in a sentry box. One of the sergeants looks after their socks, says Alice. They're changing the guard at Buckingham Palace. Christopher Robin went down with Alice. We looked for the king, but he never came. Well, God take care of him all the same, says Alice. They're changing the guard at Buckingham Palace. Christopher Robin went down with Alice. They've great big parties inside the grounds. I wouldn't be king for £100, says Alice. They're changing the guard at Buckingham Palace. Christopher Robin went down with Alice. A face looked out, but it wasn't the king's. He's much too busy assigning things, says Alice. They're changing the guard at Buckingham Palace. Christopher Robin went down with Alice. Do you think the king knows all about me? Sure too, dear, but it's time for tea, says Alice. So that's the poem about the changing of the guard at Buckingham Palace. And the next one is a fun one about the zoo. As I know, I have some nieces and nephews who really like the zoo. So this is what, and they also like Winnie the Pooh stories. So this is one for them. Okay. It's called At the Zoo. There are lions and roarings and tigers and enormous camels and things. There are buffalo bisons and a great big bear with wings. There's a sort of tiny potamus and a tiny rhinoceros too, but I gave buns to an elephant when I was at the zoo. There are badgers and bidgers and bodgers and a superintendent's house. There are masses of goats and a polar and a different kinds of mouse. I think there's something called a wallaboo, but I gave buns to the elephant when I went down to the zoo. If you try to talk to the bison, he never quite understands. You can't shake hands with a mingo. He doesn't like shaking hands. But lions and roaring tigers hate saying, "How do you do?" But I give buns to an elephant when I go down to the zoo. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. There are two poems from A.A. Milne's When We Were Very Young, some of the original Winnie the Pooh stories. So, have a good evening. I hope you enjoyed the stories, and we will see you guys next time on Mrs. Bray Reads a Story.